Episode 5 of Season 2 of the Belleville Sens podcast is here. We'll recap a busy 3-game week for the Senators that saw them pick up 3 of a possible 6 points, including a win during a comeback overtime thriller. In the first installment of the Battle of Ontario, we will hear from the first Belleville-born player to suit up for the Belleville Sens, Cam Supryka, and we'll get you set for a road trip to the Atlantic Division. Sens are off to Springfield, Massachusetts, and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania this weekend. So lots to cover on this week's show. David Foote and Brock Ormond here to do that for you. Before we get going, a reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. And if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review. That would be much appreciated. First homestand is in the books, Brock, and I think Belleville Sens fans are pretty excited with what they've been able to see here over 4 games at CAA Arena.
Absolutely, it's been a lot of fun hockey, that's for sure. And both games this past weekend against Toronto certainly was more a microcosm of that. A couple of overtime games. One went to a shootout. Belleville split it. They won in overtime on the Friday, lost in the shootout on Saturday. But certainly fans, and even they were walking by, some fans were saying that was a really fun game. We got our money's worth for sure, and that's what we like to hear. And the Belleville Sens certainly have shown a lot of good improvement from last year after finishing outside of that playoff bubble in the American Hockey League's North Division. But had a tough game against Milwaukee. Only held the Admirals to 15 shots, so that's a real positive on the defensive end. But unfortunately, Milwaukee just picked their spots really well and came up with some key timely goals, and it led to a victory. Yaroslav Askarov played well in that one, and then of course before the home opener win. But basically a 1-1 weekend, which is not too bad at all when you consider the quality of opponents they were playing, with the Marlies twice and then the Milwaukee Admirals, who have given Belleville fits over the course of their regular season record historically. And Belleville still has yet to win a game, but they'll get there for sure, and they definitely can show some positives. And even Dave Bell said the low points of the week were still fairly confident and confidence builders, I guess you would say, and the Belleville Sens certainly put themselves in a position to win in all 3 games, really. And we'll touch on it here momentarily, but Matt Highmore had a great week. He had a couple of real nice goals, scored against Milwaukee, the only marker for the Sens on Wednesday night. And then they come in and they take 3 out of 4 points from a Marlies team that they desperately need points from. No matter if it's first game, last game of the season, they need those points, and they got 3 of them and came very close. And some fans and some staff members may say they probably should have had a 4th point with that shootout loss, but certainly put a great effort forward against a Marlies team that's always stacked with players. And Belleville certainly has a lot to build off of going into this week's road trip.
Yeah, let's break the games down one by one. We'll start on Wednesday night against Milwaukee. You mentioned the toughest night, perhaps, of the 3 last weekend with a 4-1 loss. The Admirals continue to be undefeated against the Senators. You mentioned Matt Highmore scoring Belleville's only goal. Matt Sogard only faced 15 shots, but not the best night out for him, though. It was a couple turnovers and a power play goal that kind of made the difference. And like you kind of alluded to in your opening comments, Brock, we talked to Dave Bell after the game, and he said, you know what, we have a lot to learn from in this game. And at the end of the day, I'm not overly upset with how we played, and I think that gave the Sens perhaps some confidence heading into the rest of the week.
Yes, absolutely. And when you have that vote of confidence from your head coach to say that, yes, you lost by 3. Yes, it was a tough game, but you only held the opposing team to 15 shots. More often than not, that's going to get you the victory in the American Hockey League. Unfortunately, just a couple of, like you said, poorly timed turnovers, and the Milwaukee Admirals, as good of a team as they are, made them pay for it. So, Dave Bell is confident in his team. He's been around the Sens for a few years. He's had the same players. He knows what it takes to win, and certainly if he's saying that the effort was solid and good enough to win, then that should give them a vote of confidence moving forward.
And it seemed to, because they came out against the Toronto Marlies and weathered a storm at first on Friday night, but eventually it took them till late in the game to score, but they were able to weather the storm, play a nice, tight, competitive hockey game against one of the better teams, at least on paper, in the North Division. Matt Sogard, much better, 42 saves in that game. Jacob Larson, the overtime hero, will hear that goal coming up, and then you get Roby Jarventi scoring late in the third period to open his account on the season. So kind of a flip where you don't have a lot of goals, but a lot of moments that are positive and a lot to be happy about with the shootout, the come-from-behind overtime win against Toronto on Friday.
Yeah, they stayed close the whole night, and that was the key. They allowed the one goal, but as long as you don't allow that second one in a tight game like that, you can kind of sense what kind of a game it's going to be right off the top. And the Marlies and Sens battled through 50-plus minutes before Belleville finally found the net, and it was Roby Jarventi with a key goal on the power play, making the Marlies pay for an infraction, and then they end up coming through with the overtime winner. And Jacob Larson certainly has really shown his ability to step in the big moments, and he has really stepped his game up this year. He's a true top four defenseman for this Sens team. Not that he wasn't last year, but certainly has stepped in and been much bigger contributor for Dave Bell, and he looks very comfortable in that role, and he's allowed to break free offensively too. They allow him free reign to jump in on the offense when it's least expected, and he did that right there. 3-on-3, they go in on a 2-on-1, and Matt Highmore's a good setup man, so he gets in there and he floats a perfect pass, a one-timer right on the tee for Larson. He blows it through the legs of Dennis Hildeby to win it for Belleville, and that really pushed them on, and it seemed like it gave them confidence again going into the next night.
And they came out flying the next night. Belleville getting on the board and taking a lead on Toronto. Unfortunately, they end up going to a shootout and falling 4-3 in the skills competition. But Lassie Thompson had an extremely good game offensively. I think 6 shots on net plus a goal. Highmore scoring again. The captain, Dylan Hetherington, gets his first of the season, and that's always a confidence booster for the entire group. When Heater scored that goal, you could see how much that meant, not just to him, but to the entire Belleville Sens bench at that point in the game.
Yeah, and Coach even mentioned it after, too. He said that gives the guys a lot of confidence and gives them the ability. When you see a leader-type guy like Dylan Hetherington, a guy that doesn't score a whole lot, that's not really his game from the blue line. He's more of a steady, dependable type, but when he gets into those areas, he can really shoot a puck, and we discovered that in that first period of Saturday night's game. Just a perfect snipe off the far post and in that looked like a true goal scorer's shot. And then he steps back in and plays a dependable game like he does. And as a two-way guy, that really helps kind of expand the offense a little bit from the blue line. And Lassie Thompson, again, scoring, like you said, snapping that one bar down on Keith Petrozelli. And then Highmore getting another one, too, in that first period. So Belleville had probably its best period of the entire week, that entire 3-game slate. The first period was by far their best, and then the Marlies just kept chipping away like they have done, and they get a couple of goals courtesy of one of their top guys, Alex Steeves, and then it goes into a shootout. Basically, it was a tie game, and that skills competition proved to be Belleville's undoing in Saturday night's game, but a great effort all the way around, and both goaltenders, Sogard and Marolina, were outstanding.
Yeah, they were. That has definitely been a high point for Belleville early on in the season, and we knew it would be on paper, at least when you look at the goaltending situation. And both those guys, I mean, Levy, kudos to him from coming up from Allen in less than 24 hours after the call-up. He's starting against the Marlies and having to play overtime in a shootout as well. And then Matt Sogard has just been textbook since the season began. So goaltending certainly not a worry right now for the Senators, again, as long as everybody stays healthy. So a good week, 1-1 and 0-1. And a win, a loss, and the shootout loss as well. 3 out of 6 points for the Belleville Sens. And at the end of the week, it's got Belleville sitting in fifth place in the division. But not far back, only 4 points back of Rochester, who's in first, 3 points back of Toronto in second, and just a point back of Syracuse and Cleveland, who are tied with 8 points each. Tough start for the Utica Comets and Laval Rocket. They've each only won one game. Utica with 4 points, Laval with 3 through their first 5 and 7 games of the season. respectively. Sens statistical leaders after 6 games. Matt Highmore leads in points with 5. Zach McEwen and Highmore each have a pair of goals. Max Gannett is the new assist leader. He's got 4 after a 2-assist game on the weekend. And power play goals, Nicholas Montempalo, who's up in the NHL right now, Igor Sokolov, Matt Highmore, and Roby Jarventi each have 1. Nobody scored shorthanded for Belleville. No surprise that Dylan Hetherington has the best plus-minus on the team. He's +3, as is Cole Reinhardt. And then Matt Sogard. All the goalies have been good, but Sogard leads in wins with 3, goals against average at 1.73, and save percentage at .944. Now, somebody asked me, how's the team doing through 6 games? And it's only been 6 games. And, yeah, the Sens are in the middle of the pack right now. But it's a long season, and I think if they can continue to build off of this foundation they've set early on in the season, they shouldn't have much problem climbing up that ladder and trying to catch the likes of Cleveland, Syracuse, Toronto, and Rochester.
Yeah, no, that's all about staying in that mix, too. It's, like you said, still pretty early on in the season, and usually you don't get to see what teams are really like and how they can break away. About maybe 20, 25 games in is when you start to see things mold, and the Belleville Sens have every bit of an opportunity to really take charge of the North Division and run with it, with the likes of the Marlies and Laval fighting for it. Cleveland, Syracuse, Utica, all tough teams. So is Rochester. And really, this is a good thing for the Belleville Sens to have such competitive teams in their division and to fight it out with. And Belleville, again, taking 3 of 4 points from the Marlies. That's crucial. Beating Laval in the home opener it's also big. So you can bank as many points as you can get in the early part of the season. That's key. And for the Belleville Sens, they've been playing pretty well, too, all things considered. Again, it's still quite early. They're trying to find their systems, and Dave Bell has talked about it with you and I as well, just trying to figure out systematic play, and it's always going to be a work in progress until, like you said, about quarter of the way through the season. But Belleville's got every bit of an opportunity to take charge and seize the day in the North Division. And it starts again, couple of big games to begin the month of November in Springfield and Wilkes-Barre, Scranton.
Handful of transactions last week. Jacob Bernard-Docker was recalled from loan by Ottawa, as was Nicholas Montempalo and Tyler Clevin. We mentioned the call-up of Levi Marilainen to Belleville from Allen. And the big one, maybe not on a lot of people's minds, but the big one in terms of this franchise and its history was defenseman Cameron Supryka signing a professional tryout from the Fort Wayne Comets of the ECHL. The first Belleville-born player to play in a game for the Belleville Sens will join us in our next segment on the Belleville Sens podcast, so stay with us. We'll leave you on segment 1 with this week's highlight of the week, courtesy of Jacob Larson, the overtime winner against the Marlies on Friday. And Larson on a 2-on-1. Highmore holding to Larson. He scores! Jacob Larson wins the game on a one-timer from Matt Highmore. And the Sens steal the extra point from the Marlies on this Friday night.
Toronto had no legs left. They were doing the cute plays inside the zone, trying to get that winner. The puck is...
Cheer on your home team, the Belleville Senators. Edge of your seat action.
Puck out of the scrum for Max Gannett. Walking in, firing, scores!
Wednesday, November 8th, 7 p.m. Your Sens play the Syracuse Crunch, AHL affiliate of the Tampa Bay Lightning, for Winning Wednesday. Specials on merch and concessions like $5 tall cans, 6 p.m. till puck drop. Full details on ticket options and more at BellevilleSens.com.
Go, Sens, go!
All right, segment 2, episode 5, season 2 of the Belleville Sens podcast. David Foote and Brock Ormond here with you. We just finished recapping a busy week with the Sens going 1-1, 0-1. A win, a loss, and a shootout loss against the Toronto Marlies and the Milwaukee Admirals. In segment 3, we'll get you set for Belleville's only trip to Springfield and Wilkes-Barre this season. That's where they head this weekend. But now in this middle section, we're going to keep it local, up the Quinty content a little bit, because a big story from the club over the weekend was that Cameron Supryka was called up from ECHL Fort Wayne. 22-year-old defenseman actually made his AHL debut on Saturday on his 22nd birthday and becomes the first Belleville-born player to actually get into game action with the Sens. Goaltender Anthony Popovich did back up when he was on an emergency recall from Queen's University a couple seasons ago. Took warm-up but didn't play, so young Cam is going to have the bragging rights. And as we record this episode of the Belleville Sens podcast from the Jack Miller Press Box and Media Center, young Cam Supryka is down on the ice right now getting in some extra reps with Sens coach Nathan McKeever as he's been here all week, made his debut Saturday. Sometimes these PTO call-ups don't stick around, but out of necessity right now more than anything, he is here, and it's a huge opportunity for a local kid, never mind what it means in the grand scheme of things to this hockey club.
Absolutely, and again, the Supryka family, such great hockey people all the way around, with Jason being an assistant coach here in Belleville for many years. He coached various teams in the Quinte community. He's now scouting. He's done all this stuff, and brother Josh as well played here with the Wellington Dukes for a couple years. Then he went off to school. Then he went to the Kingston Frontenacs, and he came back to the Dukes for a memorable playoff run in 2018. And now Cam, who had some experience in the Ontario Hockey League, he suited up for the Lindsay Muskies first in the OJHL, then the Peterborough Petes, and then he went on to Hamilton and Guelph as well, along with the Erie Otters. So he's been around, to say the least. He's had a lot, his bags packed a lot, but he's here now and has gotten his opportunity to play for a hometown team. And it took 7 seasons, like you said, but it was well worth the wait. Let's face it. It's you don't want to rush somebody in there just to say you had a record or making history. But Cam Supryka did look pretty good on Saturday night, really, in his first game in Belleville. And he never really looked at a place, although he didn't get as much ice time as Coach Dave Bell said he would have liked to have given him because of all the penalties early on. And then, of course, it was a tight game in the third period, so I don't recall him seeing the ice even once, but he definitely did not look like he was out of place or didn't look frazzled or panicked at all, playing in the American Hockey League in his hometown in front of a lot of loved ones in the stands, and he ends up with a pretty solid game. And when we talked to him after the game on Saturday night, you couldn't wipe the grin off his face. The guy was smiling from ear to ear, and you couldn't wipe it off. He was just so happy to be in Belleville, and he talked to us afterwards and said too that his dream was to be a Belleville Bull, and unfortunately it never came to pass once he got old enough to play junior hockey, because by that time the Sens were just about here. So it's nice to see that Cam got his wish to play for a Belleville team at the very least, came in the American Hockey League, and he's well deserved to get another couple of looks. Well,
we won't leave you waiting. We'll play this interview with Cam Supryka for you, and then we'll chat a little bit more about what this means for the club to have a homegrown player lace him up and be out there again for who knows how long, but for the time being for sure. So here's Cam Supryka after his AHL debut on Saturday night against the Toronto Marlies. Cam Supryka, how's that sound to be not only in the American Hockey League but with your hometown team as well?
Yeah, it's really exciting. When I got the call last night, I was ecstatic. And even today's my birthday, and to be able to play in front of my family, I couldn't have asked for a better day. And it's too bad we didn't get the win, but it was a really good experience, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I was going to say happy birthday as well. What have the last kind of 12 to 24 hours been like for you?
So last night I had a game in Fort Wayne versus Toledo. Unfortunately, we didn't get a win. It was a tough game for us, but right after the game, I found out I was coming to Belleville, and it was crazy from there. We ended up leaving that night, actually. So we left Fort Wayne at 12:30, and we got here at 8 in the morning this morning, and kind of slept from there till about 2 o'clock, and then came straight to the rink and jumped right into it. So it's been a long, 12, 24 hours. So I was just talking to my mom and dad, and they were saying like how excited they are just to even get to sleep tonight. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy.
I bumped into your dad at Starbucks the other day, actually, I was unfortunate he couldn't be here. Obviously, he's working, but naturally, you've talked to him and got some advice, I'd imagine.
For sure, yeah. I'm very lucky to have my dad, who's been in hockey for a long time, obviously with the Belleville Bulls, and now he's scouting with the LA Kings. So, been pretty fortunate to be able to learn a few things from my dad, and obviously, give me a few tips and pointers before each game, just so I'm prepared and ready to go.
You're obviously very familiar with this building. How different was it tonight to come out here in the American Hockey League and to make that jump in your career?
It was really cool, honestly. I'm not going to lie. I even just walking down these hallways, I remember when these walls were painted in black, yellow, and red, and with the balls. And I remember, honestly, just walking down here, from the age of 8 years old, and just loving to look at all the sticks and to be able to walk out of those doors. It was always a dream of mine to play for the Belleville Bulls, and obviously that never happened. But it was kind of a dream come true to be able to play for Belleville tonight, so it was pretty special.
You played pretty close to home, time in Peterborough, a little bit in Lindsay, and then obviously in the western side of the OHL as well. How would you kind of characterize the path that you've taken to this point?
Yeah, it's definitely been different. I think that's the one thing I've learned is everyone's path is different, and just to trust the process. I mean, I talk to my friend Nick Robertson all the time about that. There's going to be ups and downs throughout the season and throughout your career, and it's just sticking with it. I mean, I've just never quit, and I'm going to continue to keep sticking with it and working as hard as I can just to keep trying to move up as much as I can. And it's been tough. I'm not going to lie. I've been kind of I've played on a couple teams. I've battled throughout the OHL. I mean, last year I was on a tough team as well. We didn't have a very successful season, and just kept grinding and kept learning, and I'm just trying to get better each day, and that's my mindset every single morning when I wake up.
What's the message from Coach Dave Bell and maybe from GM Ryan Bonus in bringing you in? Have they said much about what they'd like to see from you?
Yeah, just to play my game, play simple. I mean, they knew the travel I went through in the past 24 hours I've had, so just to stick with it, play your game, and everything else will kind of fall into place.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you here. Obviously, you look happy to be here, and we'll see what happens here moving forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, there's defenseman Cam Supryka, and you couldn't see that video, but you could probably hear the smile on his face. I think from the time he stepped in front of that backdrop to the time we stopped recording, he didn't stop smiling. Probably didn't all day, probably didn't all night, and it's been awesome. And again, he's still out there right now as we record this episode, maybe 25 almost 30 minutes after Belleville's practice ended here on this Wednesday morning. It's incredible for the club to have some local content, somebody that the fans can maybe immediately gravitate to and say, hey, that's our guy. He's from here. This is what we want to see as local products developing. But how about the opportunity for Cam Supryka to come in here and get noticed and maybe make something out of this PTO? Who knows?
Right, yeah, it's there's always that possibility because when you're one step below the NHL, you've always got an opportunity because you never know when injuries can crop up. You got different call-ups, different needs for Ottawa, and that leads to him getting a bigger chance in Belleville. And then, I mean, like you said, who knows? You might be able to push forward and get that chance if you keep pressing and keep continuing on your pace. And yeah, Cam Supryka, this is the ice that he pretty much grew up on at the old Yarbin/CAA arena.
A little smaller than maybe when he was a young buck. But
exactly, yeah. A couple of ice sides get chopped out, but yeah, he's enjoying himself, and you could tell he's in his element right now, like you said, and he's traveled. He's been well traveled, like you said. He didn't get a whole lot of rest after that long trip back from Fort Wayne. And he comes in and plays pretty well with limited ice time. But he's used to the travel, being from Lindsay, Peterborough, and Hamilton. And I should bring a caveat in. I said Erie Otters, not Sarnia Sting, the team that he actually played for, and the Guelph Storm and the Hamilton Bulldogs as well. So he's had a lot of experience in the junior ranks. And then he gets in with Tulsa last year, the Tulsa Oilers of the ECHL, and performs really well in a full season there. Then he gets another shot in Fort Wayne, and then all it takes is just one injury, one call-up, or a couple of call-ups, and he's there. And like we said, he looks very, very comfortable here and doesn't look like he's at all panicked whatsoever. And Dave Bell hopefully will give him a little more of a wider look and give a wider lens to what this kid can do for this Belleville team.
It's going to be a bit of a crash course for him in the Senators' systems and style of play, but he's diving in head first. Obviously happy to be here, and we're really excited to see how Cam Supryka develops, what might be next for him either here with the Belleville Sens or beyond. That's the player feature this week. When we come back after this short break, we will tee up the week ahead as the Senators get set to head east again. Also, some big league-wide news affecting the Belleville Sens. We'll break that story when we come back as well. This is episode 5 of season 2 of the Belleville Sens podcast.
Cheer on your home team, the Belleville Senators. Edge of your seat action.
Out for Max Gannett. He'll fire and scores!
Friday, November 10th, 7 p.m. Your Sens play the Cleveland Monsters, AHL affiliate of the Columbus Blue Jackets, for military appreciation. Pre-game ceremony to honor military members. Display from the NAFMC and more. Full details on ticket options and more at BellevilleSens.com.
Go, Sens, go!
Final segment of episode 5 of season 2 of the Belleville Sens podcast with myself, David Foote, and Brock Ormond. Thanks again to Cam Supryka for his post-game time. We are anxiously waiting to see if Cam will get in the lineup on the road this weekend as the Senators head east. Second time they'll head east this season. First time in November. They'll also be back out that way at the end of the month when they go visit Hartford and Utica and some other spots. But this weekend it's the Springfield Thunderbirds and the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Sens played 4 times against Springfield last season, but we'll only see them twice this year. Just the one game at home, the one game away. They don't come here until, I think, the springtime. But Springfield Thunderbirds are an interesting opponent. They're a team that lost over a dozen players from last season, including Matt Highmore, who lands here in Belleville. And but at the same time, you know, they've got some memories of a Calder Cup final not too far in the back of their minds, and they've made some really nice additions on that team, including another local connection with Malcolm Subban as one of the goaltenders in Springfield. This will be, and always tends to be, a difficult opponent this week.
Yeah, that's right. And Malcolm Subban seems to rise his game when he plays against his old city team, the Belleville Sens. He played for the Bulls for 3 seasons from 2010 to 2013, and he was certainly character different than his brothers, though, PK and Jordan, but he was a quiet sort that just played the game right. He was a strong goaltender, a little bit unorthodox, but he was outstanding, one of the best goaltenders the Bulls ever had. And now he's back. He's in the St. Louis organization. He played in Buffalo, Rochester the last few seasons. He had played for Boston and Vegas as well in the past, but Malcolm Subban gets his opportunity to play against his old team, and yet another road trip and yet another homecoming for Matt Highmore, coming back to Springfield, Massachusetts to play against his old team where he had 60-plus points last season. And so Highmore has been on a good roll lately, scored a couple of goals in this past homestand, and has gotten into the lineup pretty consistently for Dave Bell. So he'll be coming back with a lot of purpose and something to prove against his old team, and it should be a very exciting road trip to go on.
It's been an intriguing start to the season for the Thunderbirds. They lost their first game of the year at home to Hartford and then beat Providence at home the following night. Then they lost 3 in a row, but since then have won 3 in a row. They had a 3-3 at Hartford versus Providence, and then at Providence last weekend. They won all 3 games. So this is a team that is definitely ticking right now and starting to figure things out after a slow jump out of the gates.
Yeah, that's right, and it's always tough to play those teams that get off on a hot streak early on. But the Belleville Sens have that extra added purpose and added incentive to beat a Springfield team that has come out of the gate strong. And we'll see if they can try and push forward against them. The Thunderbirds definitely gave Belleville a hard time last year at points, but the Mass Mutual Center, always a pretty difficult building to play in. So Belleville needs to get off to a strong start against them and really take the crowd out of it and make sure that the Springfield Thunderbirds don't get on a roll, because they can score in bunches for sure.
They've got players like former Senator Matt Pekka on the roster, among a whole bunch of others. And you're right, they did give Belleville fits last season. Sens were 0-4 in 4 meetings with the Springfield Thunderbirds last season. So that's coming up on Friday night, 7:05. Puck drop will be on the air around 6:50 from, as Brock mentioned, the Mass Mutual Center in the home of the American Hockey League, the town of Springfield, Massachusetts. And then the following night, so after the game on Friday, Sens will drive a couple hours to the west, and they'll head back into Pennsylvania, where they'll meet a team that they beat 2 of 2 times last season, the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. This team, a little bit different from last year. They've lost some high-power pieces, but always a competitive bunch to play against, and usually a tough building on a Saturday night as well. They get about 7,000-8,000 into the Mohegan Sun Arena at Casey Plaza, and it is loud and boisterous and is always exciting, it seems, when the Sens and Penguins get together. They play a lot of tight matchups.
Yes, that's right. And the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, another team that has been competitive, staying afloat. And Belleville, coming off of a little mini road trip from Springfield to Wilkes-Barre Scranton, so crossing states on overnight Friday into Saturday. So we'll see if that has any effect on the legs for the Belleville Sens. I mean, they've done this before, so it's not new to them. But coming off, it's what's likely going to be a really tough game in Springfield against a team that's gotten off to a strong start. And then you got to play a Wilkes-Barre Scranton team that is always right there in the mix and gives you a hard time. But Belleville, again, flip-flopping, winning a couple games last year, including one at home right before Christmas. It was 3-1. And it was probably one of Belleville's better defensive games, I would say, last year. From what I can recall, the Sens were just swarming the Penguins and not allowing them much room to operate. But, the Belleville Sens are going to be in a good spot here to try and take at least a couple points from this road trip. A split would probably be ideal. Of course, 2 wins would be ideal, but a split would definitely be crucial. And maybe on the back night, maybe they may get stronger as the weekend goes on, just trying to get their legs underneath them after a multi-hour road trip on Thursday. They get in the day before, and then they got to travel a couple hours the next night to play. So we'll see how it goes with the Belleville Sens facing 2 really good opponents, and this is going to be 2 really good tests for them moving into the month of November.
And Wilkes-Barre Scranton started the season with a win, a couple losses, 3 straight wins, and then most recently a 6-1 loss in Hershey. They do play again tonight. It is Wednesday, November 1st as of the recording of this podcast. So the Penguins do play tonight, and then they host Hershey on Friday while the Sens are in Springfield. So they're going to be just kind of sitting at home and waiting for Belleville to roll in, and it is a 6:05 start on Saturday from the Mohegan Sun Arena at Casey Plaza, so it'll be a 5:50 pregame show. Just keep that in mind. 1 hour earlier on Saturday when the Sens visit the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And the Penguins have a pretty good roster as well. A lot of familiar names. Some guy named Alex Nylander is in the mix. Jansen Harkins coming over from the Winnipeg organization is a big one. Xavier Ouellet, who was the captain of the Laval Rocket for a handful of seasons, and in goal, Garrett Sparks, who used to give the Sens fits when he was with the Toronto Marlies, is in the Penguins black and gold as well. So we're not sure who we're going to get. It obviously depends on how Wilkes-Barre Scranton's weekend shapes up, but another strong opponent, and I think another good early season test for this Senators team that's partially still figuring itself out, but also starting to stand on its own 2 feet a little bit after 6 games.
Yeah, that's right, and Alex Nylander is the type of guy that can win you a game. I mean, you can't do it all by yourself, but Nylander is a true catalyst, and the Pens are lucky to have him. The brother of course, Toronto Maple Leafs, William Nylander. And then, Garrett Sparks, another former Leaf that had real big moments for himself quite a few years ago now, getting a shutout in his NHL debut and really using his size to his advantage. Another former Guelph Storm playing big time minutes for the Storm for a couple seasons, and so it should be a very interesting game and matchup for the Sens, and hopefully they can pull out a couple of points because it's needed early on. You can't afford to waste any games this early in the season, leaving points on the table against an opposite division that's going to be competitive as always again.
So that is Saturday, Wilkes-Barre 6:05 puck drop. Friday night, Springfield 7:05 puck drop. We hope you'll join us on either AHL TV, and if you don't have an account, just head to watchtheahl.com and sign up, or you can hear the game free on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network through BellevilleSens.com, our Mixlr page, or the Belleville Sens app as we get back to action on Friday and Saturday. Lastly, before we go, this is breaking news just as we're finishing up recording, and thanks to the American Hockey League for getting us this bulletin before we go off the air, but the league's monthly awards have come out for October, and Belleville Sens goaltender Matt Sogard has been named the AHL's goaltender of the month, and for good reason. In 5 appearances last month, Sogard went 3-1-0 with a 1.73 goals against, a .944 save percentage, had a shutout, stopped 135 of 144 shots. This is not surprising based on the way he has played, and an excellent way to start the season for the Senators' number 1 guy in the AHL.
Yeah, that's awesome, and congrats to Matt Sogard. Very well deserved, and he was incredible getting that shutout in the first game against Hershey and silencing the Bears faithful, all 10,500 plus of them that were there to see the banner raised and hopefully see their Bears take the victory and use that excitement to their advantage. Instead, Sogard comes in and buries the Bears with a big shutout, and his team got outshot by a pretty sizable margin, and he kept them in the game and allowed them to get the victory. And then he ends up with a great game against the Marlies. 42 saves he made in that 2-1 overtime victory on Friday. And also should say he ended up shutting down the Lehigh Valley Phantoms after a difficult start for Kevin Mandolese. He comes in, doesn't allow a goal against them, and then allows 4 goals against Laval in the home opener, but was still steady enough to keep his team very much in the game and keep them just that little bit far ahead before the Rocket could reach them. And then comes in and makes 42 stops, I mentioned, against the Marlies on Friday. Just unbelievable stuff from him, and very well deserved for the goalie of the month. And Sogard certainly proving to everyone that he does belong, and he does deserve to be the number 1 guy for the Belleville Sens this season.
It is the 4th pro season for the 22-year-old from Aalborg, Denmark. The next game he plays will be his 70th. For the Belleville Sens, and he is starting to climb up the franchise's stat rankings in the goaltender categories in almost all of them. Games played, wins, minutes, saves, you name it. He is becoming one of the greats for the Belleville Sens, and we expect that to continue as Sogi settles in after being named the AHL's goaltender of the month for October. That will do it for us on the show this week. Again, Sens are in Springfield Friday. We're on the air at 6:50. They're in Wilkes-Barre on Saturday. We're on the air at 5:50. And then Sens return home next Wednesday, November 8th. The Syracuse Crunch, the AHL affiliate of the Tampa Bay Lightning, make their first visit, and that, again, is Wednesday, November 8th for a winning Wednesday. Cheap beer and food in the pregame, other food specials throughout the night as well. Coming up on November 10th, it's our Military Appreciation Night game. If you'd like to donate tickets to military members, you can head to BellevilleSens.com to figure out how to do that. That game is against the Cleveland Monsters. And then on Sunday, November 12th, our first Sunday Fun Day, 2 p.m. start. Kids' activities starting at 1 when the gates open. That's up against Cleveland as well. All of that is coming up in another week. But before that, a trip to the Atlantic Division for the Sens to try to improve their record. We hope you'll join us for those. We hope you've enjoyed the show this week, and we hope you'll, again, subscribe, rate, and review the Belleville Sens podcast. For Brock Ormond, David Foote, thanking you for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Episode 6.